What happens when an army dog, trained for war, chooses compassion over duty? Can a loyal dog change the fate of an entire kingdom? In a land where power and cruelty once ruled, one dog's heroic act sparked a revolution of kindness. This is the incredible story of Rex, the army dog, who didn't just fight for his kingdom, but changed it forever. Don't miss out on this heartwarming tale of courage, compassion, and the true meaning of loyalty. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. The people of Aurelia often spoke of their kingdom with pride. It was a land of shimmering palaces, bustling markets, and a military feared by all who dared challenge its borders. Life in the capital seemed like a dream for those who walked its clean cobblestone streets. Nobles dressed in fine silks filled the grand halls with laughter, and the sound of celebration echoed through the city almost every night. But beyond the glow of lantern-lit windows, life wasn't the same for everyone. In the quieter corners of Aurelia, where the streets grew narrower and the houses smaller, lived the ones who were often forgotten. The seamstresses, blacksmiths, and laborers who kept the kingdom running. Their days were long, their hands calloused, and their eyes filled with a silent resilience born from years of hard work and little reward. This divide between the rich and the poor was as old as Aurelia itself. The nobles lived in luxury, while the poor fought for every scrap. The kingdom's glory came at a cost, and it was the common folk who paid it. At the heart of Aurelia's power was its army, a force unmatched in skill and discipline. Soldiers stood as symbols of strength and security, their presence a reminder of the kingdom's might. And alongside these soldiers were the elite army dogs, trained from birth to serve with unwavering loyalty and precision. Among them, none were more respected than Rex. His name was known in every corner of the kingdom. With his sleek black coat and eyes that seemed to see everything, Rex was a legend. He had led soldiers through battles, saved lives, and earned medals for his courage and quick thinking. To the soldiers, Rex was more than just a dog. He was a trusted leader. To the nobles, he was a symbol of the kingdom's power. Stories of his bravery were told, in both the barracks and the royal court. He was admired, praised, and celebrated. Yet for all the praise and honor, Rex saw a different side of Aurelia. When the battles were over and the kingdom was at peace, he would walk through the city's quieter streets. He saw the children playing with broken toys, their laughter hiding the hunger in their bellies. He watched mothers stitching clothes by flickering candlelight, their fingers worn and tired. He noticed the elderly sitting alone, their eyes filled with memories of better days. Each time he walked those streets, a strange feeling stirred in Rex's chest. His instincts, sharpened for battle, whispered that something was wrong. Not the kind of danger he faced on the battlefield, but a quiet, creeping wrongness that settled deep in the kingdom's core. Why did the people who worked the hardest suffer the most? Why did the kingdom's glory shine only for a few, while so many lived in shadows? These were questions a soldier was not supposed to ask. Rex had been trained to follow orders, to protect the kingdom without question. Yet, as the days passed, the questions grew louder, and the unease in his heart refused to fade. Something was about to change. Rex didn't know it yet, but his loyalty to the kingdom would soon be tested in ways he never imagined. And in a modest home on the edge of the city, where a young seamstress named Amara stitched a gown for a royal ball, the first thread of fate was quietly being sewn. In the bustling heart of the palace, young Amara worked tirelessly in a small, dimly lit room. At just 17, she was already the sole provider for her sick mother, taking on endless hours as a seamstress for the royal household. Despite her struggles, Amara remained gentle and hopeful, dreaming of a world where kindness triumphed over cruelty. Today she had been entrusted with an important task, embroidering a gown for Princess Evelyn to wear at the grand court ball. The gown, made of the finest silk, shimmered like the evening sky. It was an honor to work on it, but it also meant pressure. One mistake could bring severe consequences. Amara's hands, worn from endless work, trembled with exhaustion. Hunger gnawed at her, and fatigue clouded her focus. Yet she pressed on, determined to finish the gown in time. But as dawn broke, her tired fingers faltered, leaving a small, almost invisible flaw in the embroidery. When Amara delivered the gown, she hoped no one would notice, but someone did. Lady Celeste, the princess's maid, was known for her sharp eyes and sharper cruelty. She inspected the gown with a cold smile that quickly turned into a scowl. "A flaw," she hissed. "Unacceptable for the princess's attire." Amara's heart sank. "I can fix it, my lady," she whispered, her voice trembling. Celeste's eyes narrowed. "Fix it? Number. You'll learn that mistakes have consequences." Before Amara could plead, Celeste dragged her into the grand hall, where nobles were gathering for the court ball. The opulent room fell silent as Celeste addressed the crowd. "This girl has insulted the royal family with her carelessness," Celeste declared, her voice echoing off the marble walls. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara stood frozen, her face pale with fear. Without hesitation, Celeste grabbed a whip from a nearby guard. "Disrespect like this must be punished," she said, raising the whip high. The first lash tore through the air, striking Amara's back. She stumbled, biting her lip to hold back a cry. Another lash followed, each strike burning with pain. The nobles watched in silence. Some looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Others whispered, more concerned about the gown than the girl. In the shadows of the hall, Rex, the kingdom's most decorated army dog, watched silently. Rex was known for his bravery in battle, a loyal protector of the kingdom. But as he watched Amara's punishment, something shifted inside him. This wasn't a battlefield. This wasn't justice. Rex's instincts, honed to protect and defend, told him this was wrong. He saw in Amara not a careless servant, but a young girl crushed under a world that showed no mercy. As the whip rose again, Rex's eyes locked on Amara. In that moment, he made a silent vow. He would not let this cruelty go unanswered. The world he had been trained to defend was built on power and fear. But now, Rex understood something deeper. True strength lies in protecting the innocent, not punishing them. And soon, the kingdom would learn that even the fiercest warrior could be moved by compassion. Rex, the kingdom's most renowned army dog, stood by the royal guards in the shadows of the grand hall. His sharp eyes were trained on every corner of the room, always alert, always prepared. He was more than just a dog. He was a symbol of the kingdom's might, a loyal warrior who had seen countless battles and stood alongside soldiers through thick and thin. Yet today, as he stood watching Amara's punishment, something inside him stirred, something he had never felt before. As Lady Celeste raised her whip to strike Amara once more, Rex's muscles tensed, and his ears flattened against his head. His instincts, honed through years of service, screamed to intervene, to protect the helpless girl who was being crushed by the kingdom's cruelty. But this wasn't a battlefield. This wasn't an enemy to be fought. This was his kingdom, and he was trained to obey its rules without question. His loyalty to the crown and his duty to the royal family were all he had ever known. Yet, in that moment, Rex couldn't ignore the overwhelming sense of injustice. Amara, trembling and vulnerable, was not a criminal. She wasn't deserving of this. The soft, innocent look in her eyes as she endured the punishment burned into his mind. He saw not a seamstress, but a young girl with hopes and dreams, someone who had been wronged by the very system that was supposed to protect her. A deep, primal growl rumbled in Rex's throat. The sound was low at first, barely a whisper against the quiet air of the hall, but it grew louder, more insistent. His eyes locked on Lady Celeste, and the growl became a clear warning, a challenge. Lady Celeste froze, her whip mid-air, as the room fell into stunned silence. The royal court, who had been murmuring and gossiping just moments ago, now turned their gaze toward Rex. The sight of the kingdom's most fierce protector, the war hero who had never flinched in the face of danger, now growling in defiance, was nothing short of shocking. The guard stepped forward, unsure of how to handle the situation. Rex had always been a symbol of loyalty to the royal family. His behavior had never deviated from his duty. But now, his actions were unmistakable. He wasn't growling at an enemy or a threat. He was growling at the injustice that had befallen an innocent soul. "Silence that beast!" shouted one of the guards, raising his hand to restrain Rex. But the dog's gaze never wavered from Amara. His growl softened into a low whine, and his eyes, filled with compassion, spoke volumes. Amara, through her pain and the blur of tears, noticed the dog's gaze. Her heart skipped a beat, as if a light had shone through the darkness. For a brief moment, she felt seen, not as a servant or a poor girl, but as a human being. Rex's presence, his fierce loyalty and compassion, filled her with a quiet sense of hope. Through her tears, Amara's eyes met Rex's, and she silently mouthed the words, "Thank you." Rex's tail swayed slightly, a gesture of comfort, before he was quickly pulled away by the guards. Though the moment was fleeting, it would remain forever imprinted in both their hearts. The tension in the hall remained thick, but something had changed. The very air seemed to hum with the realization that Rex, the unyielding army dog, had defied the kingdom's cold authority. He had chosen compassion over duty, and in doing so, had made a silent statement that wouldn't go unnoticed. For the first time, Rex was torn between his loyalty to the kingdom and the innate sense of justice that had always been buried deep within him. He had never questioned his role before, never felt the weight of this inner conflict. But as the guards led him away, Rex couldn't shake the image of Amara, her tear-streaked face filled with silent gratitude. The kingdom, with all its grandeur and power, had failed her, and Rex knew that somehow it was his turn to protect the vulnerable, to stand up for the innocent. He had broken protocol today, but it wouldn't be the last time. The road ahead was uncertain, and the choices Rex would face were more difficult than any battle he had ever fought. But as he looked back one last time at the girl, now retreating into the shadows of the royal halls, he knew he had made the right decision. He had found his purpose beyond the battlefield. It was to protect those who needed it most. The night after the shocking incident, Rex lay in the royal kennel, pacing restlessly. The cold stone floor beneath him did nothing to calm his racing thoughts. His trained mind, so accustomed to the order of battle and the strictness of duty, now struggled to make sense of what had happened. He had always known his role, a loyal soldier bound to protect the kingdom and its rulers. But today, something had changed deep within him. The memory of Amara's tear-filled eyes, her silent thanks, haunted him relentlessly. He had witnessed countless battles, faced the fiercest enemies, and stood tall in the face of danger. Yet nothing had ever shaken him like this. His heart, if such a thing could be said to exist in a creature like him, ached for her. She had been punished for a mistake born of hunger and exhaustion, and he had done nothing to stop it. It was not just the cruelty that disturbed him. It was the system, the kingdom that he had sworn to protect. Its hierarchy, its unforgiving rules, and its cold indifference to the suffering of the poor, was a place that now seemed utterly foreign to him. Amara had shown him that there was more to life than duty, more to justice than what was enforced by the throne. The following morning, Rex watched with a heavy heart as Amara was unceremoniously dismissed from her job. He stood in the shadows, his keen eyes following her as she slowly walked away from the royal palace. Her shoulders slumped, her face etched with the pain of rejection. The princess's court, with all its grandiosity, had abandoned her. She was left to fend for herself, and worse, she had to return to her ailing mother, who relied on her every day for survival. Rex's heart clenched. His loyalty to the kingdom, his obedience to the royal family, and his training as a war dog, everything he had known, felt meaningless in that moment. The rules of battle and the call of duty were no longer enough. There was something far more important now: the life of an innocent girl and her family. Without thinking, Rex made his decision. He would desert the army. It was a bold, unheard-of act. Desertion was a crime punishable by death for a war dog. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Rex had never felt more certain of anything in his life. He could not stay in a kingdom that allowed such cruelty to flourish, nor could he stand by while Amara and her mother suffered. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, signaling the arrival of his handlers. Rex remained still, his eyes set with determination. The guards entered the kennel, unaware of the decision that had already been made. They tried to lead him out, but Rex refused to move. His once strong bond with the royal army had been severed. With a final look at the guards, Rex turned and bolted from the kennel, his swift legs carrying him into the night. Rex did not stop running until he reached the outskirts of the kingdom, where the royal lands met the desolate fields. There, in a small, dilapidated shack at the edge of town, he found Amara. She was sitting by a makeshift fire, her frail mother lying on a thin mattress beside her. The weight of illness and hunger etched on her face. Rex stood at the entrance of the shack, his powerful frame silhouetted against the fading light of the day. Amara looked up in surprise, her tired eyes widening at the sight of him. She didn't know what to make of it. After all, this was the same army dog that had been loyal to the royal family, the very one that had watched her be punished in the court. But as their eyes met, a silent understanding passed between them. Rex was no longer just a soldier. He was her protector now. From that moment on, Rex became part of Amara's life. He would not leave her side. Every day, he would hunt for food in the forests and fields, his keen instincts tracking down small game and returning it to the shack for Amara and her mother. He kept watch over them at night, ensuring they were safe from any threats, whether from the harsh elements or from the dangerous people who roamed the streets. Rex's presence was more than just protection. It was a lifeline. In the cold of the night, when Amara would lie awake, fearful for the future, she could feel the warmth of Rex's body near her, his steady breathing, a comfort in the darkness. He was always there, always watching, always protecting. And as the days passed, Amara began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The once terrifying world of the royal palace, with its cruelty and indifference, now seemed distant. In its place, she found solace in the small moments of peace Rex brought her, and in the love she shared with her mother, whom Rex had helped keep alive. Though the world around them remained unchanged, inside that humble shack, something beautiful was beginning to grow. A quiet defiance, a bond that could never be broken. And for Rex, the choice he had made, deserting the army, choosing love and compassion over loyalty to an unjust system, felt more like a calling than a decision. He had found his purpose not as a warrior, but as a protector. The news of Rex's desertion spread through the kingdom of Aurelia like wildfire. A creature so deeply woven into the fabric of the royal military, the pride of the kingdom, had abandoned his post. Rex, once the symbol of loyalty and strength, had become a fugitive. The king, furious at the loss of such an invaluable asset, immediately issued an order. His soldiers were dispatched across the kingdom to track down Rex and bring him back, dead or alive. The entire royal force, accustomed to finding enemies with ruthless efficiency, was now focused on retrieving their prized war dog. But for Amara, life had only grown harder. As her mother's health deteriorated further, the situation became increasingly dire. Amara struggled to keep her small household running, but the townspeople, terrified of the repercussions of aiding a fugitive, refused to offer help. The once friendly faces turned cold when they saw her, and the streets that had once felt like home now seemed like a hostile battleground. One cold night, as the wind howled and the moon cast long shadows over the small shack, danger arrived in the form of a pack of wolves. They circled the house, eyes gleaming with hunger, and their growls reverberated through the night air. Amara clutched her mother, too weak to escape, knowing they had no chance against the predators. But just as the wolves closed in, a loud growl echoed in the night, and Rex appeared, charging toward the pack with a ferocity that stunned Amara. His teeth flashed in the moonlight as he fought off the wolves, risking his own life to protect them. The battle was fierce, but Rex's instinct and strength prevailed. One by one, the wolves retreated, and Rex stood guard, panting heavily but victorious. Amara stared at him in awe. He had saved them once again. This was no ordinary dog. Rex wasn't just a protector or a warrior. He was a guardian, sent by fate to shield her from the world's cruelty. The realization hit her like a wave. This was not just a dog who had made a choice. He was a force of nature, a being whose actions spoke louder than words, whose loyalty transcended mere duty. Eventually, Rex's fate caught up with him. One quiet morning, the royal guards, led by a determined captain, found him at Amara's home. They approached cautiously, but the mighty dog, who had become a symbol of rebellion, was no easy target. Despite his strength and resolve, Rex knew the fight was not one he could win. He had given everything to protect Amara, but now the kingdom was coming for him. In a swift, heartbreaking moment, Rex was subdued and captured. His once proud frame, the symbol of the kingdom's might, was now shackled in chains. He was brought back to the palace like a criminal, humiliated and bound. Amara, devastated by the capture of her protector, fell to her knees in despair. She had lost everything, the life she had known, the hope she had clung to, and now, Rex, the only creature who had shown her kindness, was taken from her. But even in the depths of her sorrow, Amara found the strength to act. She had to speak out. She had to show the kingdom the truth of what Rex had done for her. Summoning every ounce of courage, Amara made her way to the royal court, a place she had never dared to enter before. The grandeur of the palace, the thrones of the royal family, and the stern faces of the court all seemed distant, like a world she could never touch. But today, she would face it head-on. With trembling hands and a voice that faltered but grew stronger, Amara stood before the king and the court. She told them of Rex's heroism, how he had saved her family from the jaws of death, how he had defied his own nature to protect a world that had cast him aside. She spoke of his loyalty, not to the kingdom, but to something deeper: humanity. The court was divided. Some members of the nobility, unable to understand Rex's actions, branded him a traitor, a coward who had abandoned his duty. They shouted at Amara, accusing her of fabricating a story to save the fugitive dog. Others, however, began to see things differently. The noble titles, the court's opulence, and the kingdom's authority no longer seemed so righteous when compared to Rex's pure actions. The more Amara spoke, the more the truth began to seep into the hearts of those who had never questioned the kingdom's structure. A trial was called, the most serious of its kind. Rex's fate would be decided not in the fields of battle, but in the halls of justice. The court would decide whether the dog who had shown more compassion than many of the kingdom's finest nobles would be punished for his defiance, or whether he would be allowed to continue his path as a protector, a hero. In the silence of the court, as everyone awaited the verdict, the room seemed to hold its breath. Would Rex's compassion be enough to change the course of the kingdom, or would the dog who defied authority be made to pay the ultimate price? The royal court was tense as Amara stood before the king, the final words of her plea still hanging in the air. Rex, standing at the center, his once proud frame now reduced to the weight of his chains, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. Just as the court prepared to deliberate, an unexpected voice broke through the silence, a voice from the back of the room. An elderly soldier, his hair graying with age and his back hunched from years of battle, stepped forward. He had served the kingdom loyally, having fought in many wars. His presence commanded respect, even from the king. But today, he carried something more than just his old uniform. The soldier's weathered eyes scanned the court, his voice shaking slightly as he spoke. "I know this dog," he said, his gaze locking on Rex. "I was there the day he was rescued from a battlefield many years ago." The entire room fell silent, all eyes turning to the soldier, who took a breath before continuing. "This dog, Rex, was found as a pup, abandoned in the chaos of war. It was not a soldier who found him, but a man who saw something more than a mere animal. It was Amara's father, a loyal soldier, who served under the king's banner." A murmur ran through the crowd. Amara's heart skipped a beat, and even the king's stern face softened with surprise. The soldier continued, recounting how Amara's father had taken the injured pup in his arms, caring for him as if he were his own. "Your father," the soldier said, turning to Amara, "believed that compassion was the strongest weapon a soldier could wield. He raised this dog to protect the helpless, not to strike fear into their hearts." As the soldier's words sank in, the court shifted uncomfortably. Rex had not simply been trained to fight. His loyalty had been shaped by the kindness of a man who understood that compassion was the highest form of courage. A murmur spread through the nobles, and the king, though still composed, appeared deeply troubled by the revelation. The revelation of Rex's origins had shaken the foundations of the court. The king, once unyielding in his belief that strength and authority were the measures of a kingdom, now found himself torn. The image of Rex, the fierce war dog, standing before him in chains, seemed almost incongruous with the story that had just been told. The king's eyes lingered on Rex, his mind racing. For the first time, he saw not just a dog, but a living testament to something greater, something that transcended the kingdom's rigid walls of power. Rex, the loyal soldier, had been raised on the very ideals that the king had once dismissed as weakness: compassion, kindness, and humanity. Values that had no place in the battlefield, or so he had thought. But now, the king saw the truth. It was these very qualities that had saved lives, that had turned a simple dog into a hero. Rex had shown more bravery, more honor, and more humanity than any nobleman in the court. The king's heart began to change. The cruelty that had once seemed so ingrained in the kingdom's laws now seemed distant and alien. Was it truly power that made a kingdom great? Or was it something deeper, something that lay in the hearts of its people? "I have seen enough," the king said, his voice steady but different, as if he had been awakened from a long, troubling dream. The loyalty, the bravery, and the honor of this dog are beyond question. I see now that Rex's actions speak louder than the strength of any army or the fear of any ruler. In a gesture that surprised even his closest advisors, the king stood up and addressed the court. I hereby pardon Rex for his desertion. He will not be punished. Instead, he shall have a place of honor in the royal court, where his bravery and compassion will be celebrated. The court was silent for a moment, then erupted into whispers, some in disbelief, others in reluctant agreement. But the king's words had a profound effect. Even as Rex was led from the center of the court, no longer shackled, the real change had just begun. For Rex's actions were more than just an act of defiance against the kingdom's authority. They were a call to arms, a call for a kingdom to rethink its values. The king had learned that true greatness did not lie in power or cruelty, but in humanity's capacity for kindness, for mercy, and for compassion. The nobles, the townspeople, and the court all knew one thing now. Rex had shown them a new path. The kingdom of Aurelia would never be the same again. A grand ceremony was held in the heart of Aurelia, a day that would be remembered for centuries to come. The great hall of the royal palace was filled with nobles, soldiers, and citizens, all gathered to witness an unprecedented event. At the center of it all stood Rex, the dog who had defied the kingdom's laws and changed the course of history. The king, now a changed man, addressed the crowd. Today, we honor not just a dog, but a symbol of the values that we must all hold dear: compassion, courage, and the humanity that unites us all. As the king spoke, the entire hall watched in awe as Rex was carefully guided to the royal throne. This was no ordinary gesture. It was a statement to the world. Rex, the war dog who had once been the pride of the kingdom, was now being placed on the throne itself. It was a symbol of the kingdom's shift, a reminder that leadership was no longer about power or fear, but about the qualities that truly made a kingdom great: kindness and justice. The moment Rex settled onto the throne, a murmur of reverence spread through the room. The people of Aurelia understood the message. This was not just about a dog. It was about a new way of life for the kingdom. It was about embracing the ideals of compassion and empathy that Rex had shown them. Amara, standing beside the throne, was appointed as a royal advisor for social welfare. She was given the authority to ensure that no one in the kingdom would ever suffer as she had. Her voice, once that of a poor seamstress, was now one of power, a force for change in the kingdom. With her guidance, Aurelia slowly began to transform. The once rigid class system began to break down as the royal court and the common people alike began to recognize the importance of each individual's dignity. The kingdom's resources were no longer hoarded by the elite. Instead, they were distributed more fairly, ensuring that no one would go hungry or suffer from illness. The kingdom of Aurelia, once known for its cruelty and power, became a land where kindness and humanity reigned supreme. And it was all thanks to the instincts of one remarkable dog who had followed his heart. As the years passed, Rex became a beloved figure in Aurelia. He no longer fought battles or stood at attention in the royal guard. Instead, he lived his life as a living symbol of compassion and courage. The people of Aurelia would often gather to hear stories of Rex's bravery, not just in battle, but in standing up for what was right, for protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Rex's story was passed down from generation to generation, told around campfires and in the halls of the royal palace. His legacy lived on as a reminder to all that true strength did not lie in weapons or dominance, but in the quiet power of kindness. Though Rex was no longer with them, his spirit remained alive in the hearts of the people. Every act of compassion, every decision made with the welfare of others in mind, carried the essence of Rex's teachings. And so, the people of Aurelia remembered the lesson that Rex had taught them. True strength lies in kindness, and true loyalty is to humanity. The kingdom, forever changed, became a place where the values of love, justice, and equality flourished. And the name of Rex, the dog who had sat on the throne, was spoken with reverence, for he had shown them all that the greatest leaders are those who serve with their hearts, not their swords. Rex's journey reminds us that true strength doesn't lie in power, but in kindness and compassion. A single act of loyalty can change the world. His legacy lives on, proving that even the smallest acts of courage can spark the greatest transformations. If you were moved by Rex's incredible story, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with your friends. And remember to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring tale like this. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep believing in the power of compassion.